So welcome today. Welcome everyone to today's social system mapping deep dive session for March 20th, 2023. Today's session is Liberatory Mapping, what mapping can tell us about our own propensity for dominance. Your hosts today are me, Christine Capra, and Kara Martner. And so for those of you who aren't with us regularly or who are new, what this is first of all, it's a vision about a possibility, the possibility that social system mapping, which is the mapping methodology that we're all here to learn together and deepen our understanding of, that mapping can help generate greater self-organizing and wiser change agents within networks. It's also a learning opportunity for us to learn about mapping from one another. And it's a community practice. This Monday session is the outer layer of a nested sequence of layers of what the community practice is. So this is the most public facing layer, but whoever shows up to these sessions regularly is sharing our practice of learning about mapping and learning about mapping. So social system mapping is definitely at the core, but this community of practice piece, as well as the shared learning, takes many perspectives and roles. We are, among us, technical mapping experts. We're visionaries, sense makers who do visioning and sense making with mapping, as well as people who support the vision by contributing facilitation and coordination and other kinds of support. So it's not just about the technical aspects of mapping, but about all of what it takes. Today's agenda, I'm gonna just take a pause here and say that everything we do is a learning experience, and this session is a learning experience right now. It may well be that the learning is greatest for me and for Cindee. So how this session came about was I asked Cindee to do an on-ramp session a month ago of the social system map that she has for her community practice, or her however network. And right before the session, she shared with me her slides. Usually an on-ramp is a fairly simple thing. I go through a very generic set of slides, and somebody walks us through them and gives us a little bit of background and walks us through their map. And Cindee shared her slide deck before the session, and it had a lot of slides in it, and I was alarmed. I was like, okay, this is not a session for us to present a lot of stuff. It's just a session to walk through a map so that people can learn about mapping. We can see what a map is, because it's a very introductory session. It's for people who've never seen a map. That particular session Cindee shared with a month ago. But so we jumped on the call a few minutes early, and we were going through the slides, and she assured me she could do it in 20 minutes. And I said, okay, I'm going to trust that she knows her stuff and she knows what she's doing, and I'm going to go with it. But there were this set of slides at the very end that I really liked, that had to do with imperialism and mapping, which is a really important topic from my perspective, because the kinds of maps that we make could be used for dominating people, or they could be used for helping to liberate people. And I talk about that, and I care about that. And so I saw those slides at the end of the session, and I said, A, I don't want this to feel tacked on at the end. I think this is an important topic. B, I love these slides. C, why don't we break this into 2 sessions and take these slides at the end and have a conversation about those in our deep dive in March. So Cindee said, yay, let's do that. I got busy. My calendar is super full. I didn't think about it again until about a week ago. And I went, oh, Cindee and I need to get on the same page. And oh, we need to think about the fact that it's a white person and a white person who's given permission, and another white person who's going to do this. And we haven't actually talked about, we haven't invited anybody else to be part of it, and we haven't talked about what we want to address on. So I realized that a week ago, reached out to Cindee, and then, well, when I reached out, I thought we had another month. So I was thinking, oh, we've got time. And then I sent the email, and then I realized, oh, it's next week and my whole week is packed with meetings. So then I said, okay, I'm just going to trust that Cindee knows what she's doing and she's going to do a good job, and this is going to be great. Because the last time I was a little concerned beforehand, but in fact, it was a really good session last time in spite of my anxiety right up front. So I'm like working on how do I invite in more co-creation and how do I do more shared leadership in this context. And that was a place where my gut was saying, ugh, this is a problem. And then it turned out great. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that again. And so here's where I'm going with today's learning session. None of that would have needed to be mentioned, except that we had a little glitch and I didn't get to see Cindee's slides until like 10 minutes ago. And Cindee and I haven't had a single moment to talk. She just got on the thing. So this is the first that Cindee and I are having any kind of communication since that agreement. And I'm looking at the slide deck and I'm saying this is not only too much, but you're including sense like systems thinking, decolonization or deimperialization, and network weaving theory. And what I would like us to focus on today is just the mapping and decolonizing piece, and leave out the systems thinking piece and leave out the network weaving theory for a lot of reasons, which I would have preferred that we could have had this conversation about ahead of time, but it's my fault that I didn't give us enough time to get together and to do that, and I didn't have the space. So this is me saying, what am I going to do about this? And what I'm going to do about this is practice learning out loud and leading out loud and dealing with my own triggeredness in a way that isn't just me squawking, because usually I just say, oh, I'm triggered, this is freaking me out, and nobody knows what to do with that, and they sort of try to shut it down. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to just deal with the triggering and not squawk about my trigger. I mean, I'm going to deal with the issue. And so Cindee, I'm inviting you. So that's how I'm practicing. And so I would like to invite you now in the middle of this last minute. You just arrived here, so this is hard. To just share how you feel about what I just said and how you'd like us to proceed.
I think we should go for it. I mean, I think people are ready and willing, but whatever. So, I think you're boss, but I think we should go for it.
But what does go for it mean? That is, to me, the key issue is going for it is
I think I'm trying to make it very self-reflective. So I think it'll be self-reflective.
And like I said, you've woven in a lot. So how long do you think it will, like, there's like a lot of slides in there, and there's a big section on pattern spotting and sort of systems thinking, which isn't a session for.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll do it all, but just the top, whatever, 2/3 of it. And then we'll decide if we want to go further. But I was also aware of time, so let's go.
Okay, well, I would like us to get to Precious's stuff. And what I was hoping was that Precious's stuff would really just be the focus, and that we could just talk about that. So the more we can compact this to really focusing on the content related to those slides, and not go into the slides that are, about broader, more like the pattern spotting and all that kind of stuff, to the degree that it's super relevant to the slides about Precious's stuff. I want to make that judgment, but I don't want us to go all over, and I want us to stay focused on that piece. Is that, can we do that?
I think that will come at the end. So I saved that for the bottom.
Yeah, but that's what I didn't want to do.
I know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Well, Cindee, you're reassuring me that it'll be fine is not enough for me. I want to hear you tell me that you're doing something in response to what I'm asking for.
Yeah, but I am.
Okay,
I am doing, and you'll see in the first story.
okay. And I may need to just interject things here and there, and I hope you'll be okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you and I know you're a big, strong woman, just like I'm a big, strong woman, so we're having, and I have a ton of respect for you. And so I wouldn't do what I just did with someone that I didn't know could handle it and didn't have a lot of faith in, and also didn't trust their core intentions about the topic. So,
Great.
okay,
Good.
I'm handing it over to you now.
All right.
And
go.
tell me where to go with it. Do you want to share your screen, or do you want me to?
I
And
want
thank
you
you
to
to
share
the rest of you. Thank you to the rest of you for staying present to the degree that you are with our working things out together out loud. Okay. I just want 1 minute to settle me, and maybe we can all let go of all of that and be ready to attend to Cindee. Okay. I just want to open the chat for 1 second. Okay. And just before we hand it over to Cindee, because I commented on my triggering and my tensions around what we're doing, I just want to see if I want to make sure that everybody feels okay themselves. I mean, if anything big and important has come up that you're now concerned about, I want us to take a moment just to be sure that you feel safe in this space. But if you're good, we'll move forward. Especially the people who I'm not used to seeing all the time. I see one smile. Okay. I'm gonna assume we're all good. And if something comes up, feel free to stop us. Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Cindee. Thank you so much. Lots of appreciation.
Let's go. We're wasting time, daylight.
I think that was important time.
Yeah.
But you're feeling anxious to get going, which I understand, which is usually my role. Go ahead.
No, you're right. You're driving.
No, pardon me?
I don't know about my connection. You need to drive.
Oh, I need to share the do the screen sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to first talk about the case study,
okay.
And then we're going to ask questions about how do we identify patterns of dominance, extraction, and exploitation. And, oh, now I'm going to cough.
This is a place, Cindee, when you talk about how do we identify patterns of dominance, extraction, and exploitation, this is a thing that's of concern to me.
Okay.
Because you're pardon me?
We'll go very fast over it then.
Okay, and you'll just acknowledge that this is your take on it. This isn't the community's take on it.
Of course.
Okay.
And how do we deal with new patterns? If we have time, we're going to do breakouts. So I want to make sure we get there. Next.
Was that what I heard? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, chat intros. Can we skip the chat intros?
We can skip the chat intros.
Today. Yeah, we can.
Because of we just had another kind of intro.
Yeah. All right, next. So I'm not going to say which organization. Oh, I'm more upset than I thought.
Is there anything that would help?
No, I want to do this. All right.
Okay.
So it's an organization in Anchorage, And they decided to join Cindee Karns. And what happened was they got on our map and started mining information. And for me, that was also a triggering event because I come from Alaska where where the oil companies have come in and exploited the land, right? So I decided to write her an email back. And the next slide. The map is private, Jim, but she wanted to join as a person and an organization, so she joined twice. So this was my response. Before we start this partnership, let's think about non-colonizing ways. And I said, this is what I got from Dee Dee Pierce House and Precious Fury. And so I can't claim ownership for this. Are we here to extract resources from each other? Are we here to stop some sort of disorder or fight for something? Are we here to do good with a Superman complex? Or are we here to regenerate life? And so the top three things are colonizing. And I just said, we haven't built trust yet. So I'm a little bit nervous about you may be extracting resources, but someone has to trust first. So I hope that we can just benefit from each other mutually, not just benefit from each other mutually, but build each other up. And so the response I got back from her is, but we have lots of resources that you can extract from us. So she's definitely at the extract resources stage. Next. So our cultural aspirations for our COP is to shift from systems of dominance, extraction, and exploitation. And of course, I recognize that. So I'm like, ooh, flags went up. But we need to shift to systems of connection, reverence, and regeneration. And this is all came from our COP Miro boards. So we live in a culture of dominance. So how can we even recognize dominant patterns when we see them? Because we already live in this society. And people who I talk to about this issue, they're like, what's the big deal? She's offering to share, you're offering to share. And so it's not a big deal. And so we live in this dominant culture. And, oh, I can't see the chat. But anyway, we lived in a dominant culture. So how do we recognize those patterns? Click. So we've talked about hierarchy as a system of dominance, but really we should be looking at nature for patterns. And this is not a pattern. And usually I didn't have time to put the web in. Our patterns are webbing because it's a different pattern than hierarchical. And we just assume this is dominant. I'm not sure. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I've always said it was. So click.
I'm just going to interject. Nature has lots of nested hierarchies. Nature is nothing but nested hierarchies. And so when we're talking about hierarchies, we need to be clear which kind we're talking about. And I think nested hierarchies have gotten a bad rap from this approach. And so this is one of the things that I've struggled with now for a decade, to understand how to do better and how to not just flatten everything and think that that's going to work also. So I just, that was a triggering thing.
Click. So we have to find patterns. How do we do that? Edges define patterns. So how do we find the edges? Click. Do we tiptoe around until we stumble into a wall? Do we fall off a cliff? Do we just feel it? How did I know that that was a pattern of dominance? So how is the energy flowing? And you have to kind of figure this all out, but we all come from different cultures, so it's hard. Click. So at the edge of systems of connection, reverence, and regeneration, if those two kinds of systems collide, there is a sharing. The edges happen and it's more creativity, more openness, more opportunity. If the edges, like two circles, come together, there's strong boundaries and there's not as much connection and reverence and regeneration. Click. So what happens at the edges of a system of dominance, extraction, and exploitation? You get mowed down. You have to conform. Click. So the question is, what kind of a system or pattern do you feel at home in? And this survey is from June Hawley. And if it's okay with Christine, I'd just really like to just take an individual survey of what you feel is what kind of a system you have as a self-reflection piece. Can we put that in the chat there, Kara?
I would, this is one of the things that I responded to a few minutes. I would prefer that we skip the survey for now. I think, I know, I think one of the things that's happening is that you and I both feel like a system of dominance is trying to take us over. And that's what's hard about this. This is the kind of dynamic that I am like horrified to have happen publicly and have people who don't even know us see us doing this.
Well, let's at least skip to the next slide then.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is a reason why
Right.
So one of the things that has come to me in the last month is that I will not hand over this kind of representation of the work that I'm sourcing without doing a success spectrum and without us working together to make sure that we're clear what are we trying to impart and how broadly are we going to wander. And I have a lot of concern that people present, especially those that don't know me, are interpreting me as a real control freak. And I'm seeing that is certainly what my behavior could look like. And there's so much more nuance and so much more, I feel like we needed to be more clear about our expectations and our alignment before we did this. And we did.
Okay, let's go to the next slide because then we'll never get to Fury.
Right. So that's what I'm hoping we can do, is get to Fury. And then we can see if there's time for breakouts, etc. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And I acknowledge that this is a hard thing to be in for you. And I'm
okay. Next slide.
Okay.
So the question is, are all systems or patterns okay? And that's what we don't know. When we come across systems, how are we supposed to know if it's a dominant system or not? Next slide.
Oops.
So here's what our COP cultural aspirations are. We aspire to become carriers of cultural transformation. We need to generate an immune to dominant system. And those are from our Miro boards.
Yep.
Slide. So I want to talk about how do you know a system of dominance and a system of openness. And I came up with the guidelines from World Conversation Cafe. Next. So when you talk,
can we come back to these after we do the Fury stuff? Because are you
no, these are all good for the Fury stuff too, if we're going to just skip our conversation, but we still have to have group agreements for what we talk about. So be open-minded, listen and respect all points of view. Next.
Can I just say this feels dominating because we did not agree to these agreements. This group did not have a conversation about the agreements. I know these are the cafe agreements, and you and I did not agree to these
No.
agreements.
But they are guidelines from the, it's just an activity like any liberating structure. It's even in liberating structure, so it's good. Suspend judgment as best you can. Next one. Seek to understand rather than persuade. Next one. Question assumptions and look for new insights. Next. Speak from your heart and personal experience as we're doing. Next. Go for honesty and depth, but don't go on and on and on. So next. So in what ways can we move forward with our cultural aspirations? And that's to become carriers of a culture of transformation and need to generate an immune to dominant system. But I'm taking it that you don't want to do breakouts, Christine, is that right?
I want us to do the theory stuff first, and then I think that breakouts, I think we have a small enough group that I would like us to discuss the theory stuff together.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so just as a, wait, just as a thing, every person has a minute to talk. So no asking questions, and this is just a structure to make sure everybody is heard. So pass is also an option if you don't want to talk, and I guess I'll just call on people to say what they think about structures or limiting structures or fury or whatever. So we'll go to since we're not going to talk about the structure part, let's go to the fury part. This is a workshop I took back in 2000. And no, the first page doesn't have her. She's from Zimbabwe, but it was a presentation about I don't know, earth regeneration or something. But at the end, she said this: even though your white skin says nothing about you, you have the legacy of being white. Your skin color says imperialism. Be aware. Always assume your assumptions about people and cultures are wrong. Keep an inquisitive tone. Thank people for letting you speak. And observe, which is permaculture. Next one. So are you a person who sees data and maps people and land as things that you should extract things from? Like knowledge, gold, power, oil, time. This is imperialism. Next one. Who are you? How do you see situations? Are you a person who sees data and maps, land and things and people? Something that you should fight for, fight against? Like oil extraction, abuse, climate change. And my specialty is food security. This is imperialism. Are you a person who sees data and maps, people and land, things that you should or do good for? This is the great white father syndrome or the Superman complex. Doing something that is your idea of good is not necessarily everyone's idea of good. This is imperialism. Are you a person who sees data, maps, people, and things and land that you should regenerate? What can you add or grow? Are you looking to seek all potentials? Can you stand back and watch the system work and grow? Can you ask questions as it grows without judgment? This is what it is to be mappers. Observe, observe, observe. Next slide. So mappers must seek all potentials. And I would say, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it, that is an open system when we seek all potentials. We must be aware of imperialism. Share. The community must be able to see itself, get feedback. Next slide. Oh, now we can skip this one. This is if we had extra time. And yeah, this is all extra time stuff. So there we go.
Great. Thank you, Cindee. I'm just gonna throw a couple, so a couple of things for me, that I'm very focused on, is that extraction or dominance through a social system map can happen. And the place I'm most concerned about it is in the development phase, in the ideation phase, in the vision phase. I mean, extraction from the map, once the map is made, is one piece, but creating the resource so that it reflects everybody's perspective and that it includes that the key people, especially the people on the edges, can see themselves in it and find value in it for themselves, as opposed to feeling, because there's so many populations and there's so much historical use of maps against people and maps to control people or maps to exclude people, that the bare defining of the questions in the map and the defining of how we're envisioning the map is, to me, the starting point of thinking about systems of dominance, extraction, and exploitation in mapping. And that was the place where what I was seeing in those slides and what I was hoping that we would talk about, not extraction and dominance out in the world or in this network or that network, because that's like boiling the ocean, and we're mappers and we design maps. And this is where we need to focus our own assumptions, our own questioning of our own values and assumptions and heroism and do-gooderism and language and beliefs. And so that's that. And I think we're a small enough group that we can just open that up and let whoever, and just hear each other around that. And I'm just saying to the whole group, if we could focus around the mapping piece, because this is where we have any influence. This is where, as this group, as mappers, or as people who are interested in mapping, this is where we can actually enact a new way of doing things. Out in the world, we all have our work out in the world, but that's not what's right here. And that's not where, everybody's context is different. So that's a piece I'm always trying to bring us back to, is what we're here to do.
Okay. Can I hear from other people now?
Yeah. So
Jim, you talk?
I would like to not have us call on people. I would like to have people raise their hands or put their things in the chat, and I would just like to let see what emerges. And I don't feel like every person's voice needs to be heard. I think the people who have the strongest concerns, the people whose voices usually aren't heard, those are the ones I'm prioritizing. I'm not prioritizing those who can tell me what a jerk I am later because we're having 5 meetings a week anyway, or who are constantly contributing to the development of the community. And I apologize for making my snarky, self-deprecating comment. So I would like to just say, and you and I will share the calling on people. Okay, Cindee? Sure. Okay. So in the midst of all that, if anybody has anything it could be a comment on how this has gone so far, or a comment on extraction and dominance in developing of social system maps, or in the use of social system maps, or how we think about those things. And I do know that it does relate to everything in the world, but if we could bring it also back to our particular practice.
Are you all wanting people to respond
Yeah.
in the chat or be called on, or
wherever they're comfortable? And I did notice that Victoria just unmuted, so I'm hoping Victoria has something she wants to say.
I am really appreciative of this very externalized approach to shared learning. I thank you, Cindee, for pushing through and delivering some meaningful information around imperialism and how to recognize, those distinctions. And I really appreciate the fact that you were able to manage that piece. I think with regard to the totality around extraction and exploitation and the use of those practices in mapping, which I am very new to, I think is very poignant and necessary to keep in the forefront. And so I am just grateful that I decided to show up today. I appreciate the energy and the context in which we are all together. So thank you for this opportunity. Looking forward to learning more.
Thanks, Victoria. So Denise, you have your hand up.
Yes. First of all, Victoria, hats off to you for walking the treadmill and taking this meeting. You're making me feel really, really bad right now, but I love that idea. I think it's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you very much, Cindee, for a really moving presentation. This is really deeply intimate and personal for you. So I wanted to thank you. And thank you, Christine and Cindee, for having, as Victoria said, a very external kind of discussion about this is collaboration. To be honest with you, I feel like this is family, this is collaboration, figure it out. Yeah, it would have been good if you had it before, but you didn't, so it's fine. What I found interesting, Cindee, is how you went from your conversation of the extraction of information to this larger discussion about imperialism and dominance. And not that there isn't a link, but what I'm trying to understand, and it kind of speaks to what Christine was saying, is when you bring people in, and with my question in the chat, for your specific personal incidents, not talking about like map making in general, was there also a violation of agreement, or was there a shared agreement amongst the members of how the map material or their information was going to be used? Like, was there just an was it just implied that, oh, well, no one's going to use this information? Or was it understood that you can or cannot? Like, were there any boundaries set up like collectively at the inception stage about how the information was going to be used? And full disclosure, I asked this selfishly for thinking about how I'm going to do my own private, not my own, but lead my own private mapping. And so I was really triggered a red flag for me when you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. So I was just curious to know, like, what was already in place with the person or the situation.
She joined as a person, and I said, well, we're just starting to add organizations. So why don't you join as an organization and we can start mapping those in there. So there wasn't any, I mean, it's called a directory. We call it a directory. So she simply went to the directory and did that. And that's why I was like, maybe I overreacted, but it seemed like extraction to me, not to everybody else. So that's also very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it would be good for everyone in your group to go back and really have a conversation about this point, because it's clearly miscommunication. And then in terms of, and then I'll stop talking. In terms of our group, Christine, and having wider voices, one of the things I hope to do is I am trying to get maybe 5 or 6 people in the community that I work with to help me build it, and then hopefully come and join this broader map making community if they have the time and desire to try to bring people in, and even from different nations. Like, I am Canadian and I see things a little, not that we're better, it's not that, but we have different politics, different ways of thinking, different ways of moving and organizing that I think could bring it in. And then the different narratives of Blackness that come to it. We have East Africans, but the whole story. So I think it would be interesting for that. But I wanted to thank you both, like, for not canceling, for still going through with the messiness. And that was one of my takeaways, Cindee, is something especially so personal, is it reminded me that we really need to have like what might call a memorandum of understanding and agreement, because obviously she didn't see it as extraction, and that means the word itself needs to be unpacked a little bit more too, right? But this was a really great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a point I want to make that's coming up for me, which is, Cindee, you are the source. You are the instigator and the guide and the leader of your community of practice. And you put a lot of time and energy into it, and it wouldn't be there if it weren't for you. That's the same in this community of practice with
Right.
me. I am the source, I'm the leader, I'm the person with the vision of what social system mapping can be and the desire to include a lot of people in helping us understand that. And so you and I are sources in a certain kind of jargon, and people don't see everything that we put into it, and people don't know how deeply personal it is to us. And so they can't, because they haven't invested a huge hunk of their life. And for me, all of our retirement, and like there's a huge investment in it because there's something that we care deeply and passionately about. And often in this community, what I hear from you is openness, openness, openness. Let everybody do whatever they want, basically. And I hear you inviting in chaos and inviting in destruction of what matters deeply to me. And so things that come up may not seem triggering to anybody else, but I find them deeply triggering because they're harmful to my vision and to what I'm passionate about. And we don't talk about that in networks at all. We pretend that the source doesn't exist and the source has no right to have passion about their vision. And so in this particular instance, it felt extractive to you when that woman took that data, because you have built that data set, because you have done all the outreach, you have built the relationships. And for us to keep pretending like just pure openness is healthy is wrong, because what it does is it helps us destroy our passion and our efforts and the things that we want to create in the world. You wanted to create something in the world, and I want to create something in the world. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I understand self-organizing. I understand all the theory, and the theory is too black and white, is too unnuanced, is too simplistic, is too reductionist to actually be generative. And so this is an instance where you got a little stab in the heart around that. And I get stabs in the heart, like, very frequently around what is my passion and what I am trying to birth in the world. And so I just want to say that even if nobody else thought that was extractive, it hurt you, and you're the source. And if something is hurting you, you need to deal with it so that the surroundings can start to have a clearer picture of what it is you really do want it to be. And then they can decide. Like for me, I've gotten much more clear about, and this is an example, what's in and what's out, what I'm willing to support, what I'm not willing to support. In doing that, everybody else can say, oh, I like Christine's vision more than I knew I did because now I see it better, or I like it a whole lot less, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to get Christine to move in this other direction because I think she's dumb and not understanding the underlying principles, and I need to fix Christine, which sometimes I feel like is coming from lots of people in the community. And so I'm just saying that that's part of what's going on today. That's part of what's going on in this whole topic. That's part of what happened for you, and it's up. And so I just wanted for all of us to start to think more about really what is fueling this thing, and can we get more clear about what is fueling this thing so we can decide whether to continue to contribute to it or not, and we can also protect what's fueling it from further harm. And it doesn't mean we have the right to hurt other people, but it does mean that if people care about what we're doing, then protecting us who support it is important.
I don't think I was hurt by it. I was shocked by it. And that's a whole different thing. When people have new ideas, like when we were going to put a free refrigerator out for food, I'm like, how does that support our mission? And they talked me into it, even though I didn't support it. And it turned out to be good. So I'm trying very hard not to be affected as the source. And I'm trying to share it and be an open source thing. But I'm not making money off it. So that is a difference. And I think that I think network should be open. I don't know.
Yeah, but this is your job, right?
No, I'm not. I
Funding
get
for
a small volunteer stipend. It's not my job.
Okay. Yeah, and this is, and I understand this is, we have a slight implementing philosophical, I mean, it's more about tactics than it is about the big picture, but we do have a slight difference, and that's part of what I need to take more care about, making sure that we're not.
I think Mary had her hand up long ago. Mary, you want to talk?
You're muted, Mary.
This brings up a lot when I think of I was part of a collaborative, and the first map, June Holly urged us to make a map, or we were excited about making a map. It wasn't using SumApp at that time, and we put the collaborative as the center of this map, with people who were related to organizations raying out. And it's strange to think about that, because it implied, I think, a sense of ownership of the collaborative, even though we are connected to all of those organizations. There was a sense of ownership. And then when I think of the people of color that were part of the leadership invited in, which created opportunities for them, when you think of a national movement, it was, the other side of that was that it was extractive. I have this picture of something called the two flow, where there's a culture dying and a new culture emerging. And in some cases, I think by asking those people to facilitate or bring their capacities in, that it was extractive, sort of bringing this dying culture sort of back to life, so to speak. So I'm doing a lot of reflection about that time, and about the fact that when we're involved in change, we might be reinforcing the things that we are trying to change. And I think Cindee's message, observe, observe, observe. Someone else that I'm working with says the observation is the intervention. So there's just I think what Christine is bringing, it's so important at the beginning of creating a map, to be clear about how the network is seeing itself with funders. There's so much stress on growth, and that feeds this extractive element. And I'll end there since our time is short. Maybe I'll just add, there's sort of a paradox between the abundance and the commons that a map represents to me, and the other side of extractive. I'll stop there. I lost my train of thought there.
Curious if anyone is thinking, has a really different perspective on what we're talking about that we haven't heard from.
I don't know what happened. I'm sorry, everyone. I came late because I swore I put it at 10 o'clock. I think I did the same thing last time. I was like, I gotta stop. It's 11 Eastern time for me. But I wanted to share, I thought something that helped me the last time that I came when I was entering in design spaces with other people, what the questions, how we were like asking the questions. And I think I was thinking negatively about it, but this one made me think about it. Like what shifts when we change our perspective from looking at what's wrong to what's happening. I felt being part of that group that day with you all had me thinking about this all like every place I went into design to think of. Like I felt like I changed and shift because of coming into this space with you all. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you.
That's great. Thank you for that. Is
So my next question is, what do you think about exchanges? A lot of times we have that on our maps about exchanges. Is that a good thing or is that not, should it be a sharing thing instead of exchanges? That's a question that I'm trying to think of.
how can you say more about?
So I don't know where, somewhere in our stuff, we've talked about the map being a thing of exchanging. And I'm wondering if that word makes it sound like exchanging one thing for another. Is that fair? Like, is there an expectation that you have to exchange something back? Or is it just a sharing thing? That's where, that's my edge right now.
I see.
If I could add just a little context on that, we coded up Cindee's presentation last time. Mary's got a project where she's listing all of the maps that people have and coding them up about what they're trying to do and what their aspects are. And one of the notes I put down for Cindee's map was that they were trying to enable exchanges. And then Cindee caught me up and said, no, we're trying to share. And so that question about didactic exchanges, which we do and is an important part of moving stuff around, she was making a distinction that no, sharing is really a different sort of thing. And so I changed the note on your map for that. And it's got me thinking about that question about, does sharing mean general reciprocity where you're sharing with the community, or you're just giving something up to anyone who, anyway, it's a different kind of interaction.
It is.
Well, can I just, so in systems thinking, like in HSD, we talk about the acronym is CDE, containers, differences, and exchanges. And that's where we get that exchanges from. It would be, I kind of prefer flows. I think flows is, and it's not about direct reciprocal, it's about complex reciprocity and contribution to the whole. So it's not even about person to, for me, what I'm trying to get us to think more about is what do I get from the whole and what do I give to the whole, not to an individual, but to the whole group. And so that is part of the point from my perspective, is to be able to begin to see more of the flows. And it's really hard to talk about with people who have no language, who have no experience, so if I start saying flows, that's even more abstract than exchanges. And so we sort of stick to the CDE model because it's very accessible. It's not super complex and abstract. It is, but it can also be just a simple thing. And so there's always, but this is always part of the problem, is how do you go from here to here without making everybody learn a new language before they can participate in it? Or how do we, like, it's like a little bit at a time. It's very complex. So and exchanges can be beneficial. And they can be extractive. And so part of it is trying to understand where the exchanges are being contributory and regenerative, and where they're being extractive. So we've got 3 minutes left, and I'm gonna, just for those of you who aren't with us all the time, we have our norm is that we have a structured formal, which this has not been super formal, but a structured session that goes to the top of the hour, and then we stick around. I'll stick around for the next half hour. And Cindee, are you going to be able to stick around, or do you need to jump off?
Sure,
Okay.
good.
And then if anybody wants to stick around, we'll just, we just have an open-ended informal discussion, and it can be going deeper into this discussion, or it can just be, if you had questions about social system mapping or about the community practice that you showed up with that you would like to get answered, or, whatever it is you want to talk about, we can do that in the next, in the informal half-hour session. But we want to make sure that everybody who needs to jump up at the top of the hour doesn't have to sneak out the back door, but can have a sense of closure. And so if anyone has like a 1-minute thing they want to say right now before we close, I'll leave space for that. Otherwise, I'll do our ending ritual. A 1-minute thing from anybody? Okay, then we'll give you an extra minute. Big deal. So the ritual is, I'll count down 3, 2, 1 when you all unmute. When I get to 1, we just all give each other our blessings and our greetings and our well wishes for the day. And anybody who needs to jump off, and anybody who's planning to stick around, and you can stick around for an extra 2 minutes or 15 minutes or the whole half hour. Don't feel like you have to stay for the whole half hour if it's getting boring for you. But so let's go ahead and unmute now and say 3, 2, 1. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Especially
Thanks for joining in.
loved
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.